back with The Beautiful Side of Evil by Johanna Michaelsen, a 82 book, which deals with her transformation from a occultist into I assume, a religious person, since that's what she became. Mind Control, Chapter 9. The logs burned brightly in the enormous fireplace Mother had long since dubbed Albert's Folly. Earlier that evening, I had stood by hibiscus bushes in our lush garden, watching the dark gray clouds gathering over the mountains. The breeze had been cool and refreshing. Now a gentle rain was falling on the Cuernavaca Valley. The summer rains were beginning in earnest. I was curled on the sofa, staring into the fire, absently watching the golden flames, a Brahms concerto playing softly in the background, and my little Siamese kitten Solomon purred, content and warm in my lap. Mother sat in her blue velvet armchair, tagged the coffin corner by my father in retaliation. She was reading an Agatha Christie mystery and smoking an ever-present cigarette. From time to time, I could sense her gaze on me, stern, concerned, loving. It had long been obvious to her I needed help. Psychiatric was the category I knew to be under consideration. I couldn't say I blamed her. Agonizing recent scenes of my weeping and slamming my hand in fury against the wall leapt to my mind. The last days in Chapel Hill had been a disaster. Mom and Dad had driven up to attend the graduation ceremonies, an event I deeply regretted at the time. Father had taken an instant, uncompromising dislike to Beck, an aversion he kept thinly disguised in realms of shredding sarcasm. Any young man presented as a future son in law would undoubtedly have received similar treatment. I was Papa's baby, his firstborn. No one was good enough for me, but especially not a soft spoken, gentle, young theater lighting technician who traveled with a makeshift theater troupe and sported long hair and a beard which, however kempt, shouted hippie at him. They couldn't see that Beck had probably saved my sanity, if not my life. Beck had cared enough to see me through one of the most difficult periods of my life. Even Damon was unable, or understandably unwilling, to persevere through the maze in which I found myself. Beck had not demanded explanations I couldn't give or changes I was powerless to produce. I loved him for that, but I knew within weeks of my return to Mexico that a marriage could never work. I broke our engagement. Father probably also unfairly blamed Beck for my involvement with drugs, such as it was. Kai had no right to tell them, I thought to myself. Kai was a theater arts professor at Chapel Hill. He had known Mother when she did her graduate work there. Only 3 people in this acting program have any real talent, as far as I'm concerned, he once told me. Damon, Malcolm, and you. I treasured that, especially since having left Dr. Bryce, I had received little encouragement and knew my work in theater, with but precious few exceptions, was abominable. Somehow Kai had found out I had occasionally been in on the theater pot parties and felt obliged to tell Mother when he saw her that June at graduation. Intellectually, I understood his motives. Emotionally, I felt betrayed. Well, Kai had no way of knowing I had stopped that April, anyhow. Now, if only Mom and Dad would believe that. I had been so on edge, so depressed and moody, they were both certain I had to be on something. I sighed. They would never understand. Only God, if only I understood. Oh God, only if. Jesus. Oh God, if only I understood. I felt a constant dark oppression all around me. Would I never be free of it? The kitten shifted in my lap. I gently stroked his head. Hey, Johanna, listen to this. Father shouted up at me from his room, where he was reading the newspaper. And I quote, the mind control method. In 48 hours, you can learn to use your mind to do everything you wish. You can learn to overcome depression, relieve insomnia, eliminate negative thinking, avoid irrational fears. Father's deep theater voice gave this last point a special emphasis. Relieve nervousness, develop ESP, and even gain peace of mind. Sounds like something right up your alley, dear. What it sounds is bizarre, I said, coming into the room. Probably some bunch of weirdos. More than likely, but at least it would give you something to do. He had a point there. There was not much for a respectable young American woman to do in Cuernavaca in those days. They're having an introductory meeting tonight. Why don't you and Mother go check it out? On a Tuesday night in the rain, I queried, tentatively, not sure whether he was serious. So pretend it's Monday morning and take the umbrella, he retorted. We went. The promises listed in the ad Father had seen were confirmed and embellished at the introductory meeting by a confident looking man in his mid 30s named Tom. You will indeed do wonderful things by learning how to function at will at your alpha brainwave, he said. That level of mind trapped by the great geniuses, the great artists and masters, the great psychics. For example, I know of an old woman in Mexico City who performs astonishing healings and operations through having attained level 7, that is, control of the delta frequency at which cosmic consciousness and enlightenment are achieved. Now, most of us here will probably never achieve such amazing control as this woman, Pachita, has, but you will be amazed nonetheless at what you will be able to do. Tom looked around the room at the 15 or so people gathered and smiled broadly. Then, using charts, he explained briefly about the primary brain frequency generated by the human mind as recorded by an electrocephalograph EEG. The EEG is a very delicate and complex, not to mention expensive electronic device used by scientists to detect brain waves. The highest frequency is called beta and is associated with the usual conscious state and functioning on the most basic 5 senses level. Reading a book or yelling at the dog who just messed up your carpet for the 4th time today is beta activity. Yeah, I'm a beta. His audience chuckled at the joke and he steadied the chart he had almost knocked over with his pointer. Now the alpha state, he continued, is a lower, more stable frequency. Deep relaxation and meditation occurs at this level, as does regeneration of the body. The theta and delta states are even lower frequencies and are usually recorded during unconscious or deep sleep states. The whole purpose of mind control is to train people to gain control over the more stable alpha brain waves to help them become superior human beings. The producing of phenomena not common to most of us at ordinary levels will be your final proof that you are indeed gaining mastery of your alpha waves. I promise each and every one of you who goes through the course will have ample proof of that on our last day. Let me make one thing clear. What we will be doing is not hypnosis. At no time will you relinquish control of your mind to anyone else. Rather, you will learn to tap into those deep levels of mind at will for any purpose you desire, as long as it is beneficial to yourself or mankind. From what I could gather, Tom was implying that there was nothing a controlled mind could not do, from developing genius potential and overcoming bad habits to healing diseases and literally moving mountains. All that was needed for the mental and spiritual evolution of man was this 48-hour training program. Tom bent over and pulled a new set of charts out from under the table. Is everyone with me so far? Great, let's go on then. The mind control training program is divided into 4 basic courses. The first one teaches controlled relaxation. In 12 hours, you will learn how to relax at will and begin working in a state of mind that will heighten your creativity and efficiency. You will be able to sleep and awaken at will, to control and program your dreams to help you solve problems without stress and strain usually involved, to eliminate headaches, even migraines. How many of you here get migraines? Several people raised their hands. Well, you don't have to anymore, unless, of course, you want to. The second course is called General Self-Improvement. It applies the principles of expanded levels of awareness learned in the first course to specific problems. For example, you'll learn techniques for eliminating habits such as smoking or overeating. Improve memory and recall. You will learn to control physical pain and bleeding at will. Also, you'll be shown how to use a large mental screen, like a movie screen, to aid visualization and continue to expand your consciousness. It certainly sounded worth a try. That next Saturday morning, June 26th, found Mother and myself stretched out side by side on the floor of a spacious but rustic living room, listening to an assertive voice read our programming. Taped rounds of a metronome clicked and whirred monotonously, providing a soothing background. I took a deep breath and relaxed. I gave myself joyfully to these sessions, desperately clinging to everything Tom had to say, as though they were words of my salvation. I had returned to Mexico from Chapel Hill in despair and turmoil. I could see no hope, no light anywhere, no chance of ever breaking free from the forces which surrounded me. My copies of the King James Bible, The Power of Positive Thinking, and The Power of Prayer had done little to help. Here with mind control, however, was my salvation indeed. It was possible to gain control over unknown forces, to gain power and victory over them. And I thank God for it. I let the phrases spoken by Tom during each session wash over me. Every day in every way, I am getting better, better and better. I have full and complete dominion over my senses and faculties at this level of mind or at any other level, including the outer conscious level, as this is so. I am always in control. Words of hope and freedom. On the third day, we began learning how to use visualization and image creation to help us develop our intuition and subjective communication. Obscure terms used to describe ESP, which Tom called not extrasensory perception, but rather effective sensory projection. We learned to project our minds into different metals, exploring the different textures and qualities of brass, lead, and iron. We mentally traveled through a leaf, then a little animal, but gently, very gently. Little pet birds had been found suddenly dead after careless psychic handling. It all might at this stage appear to be imaginary to some of you, Tom agreed, as a few members questioned the purpose of this section of the program. But very real things are taking place on a different dimension. Trust me, it will all be proven to you on the last day. Meanwhile, let's move on. You still need to create your laboratory before we're through for today. This laboratory was a room of our own choosing, which we created in our minds. It was to be our haven and refuge, our place for solving problems. It could look any way we wanted. Some chose French provincial, others early American. My room was a cave. The walls were made of amethyst and emerald crystals and glowed from within with a shimmering golden light. The gentle scent of roses and night jasmine permeated the room. There was a large royal blue velvet armchair, which I placed in front of a fireplace, which was always kept lit. We were instructed to put 2 filing cabinets in the room, one for male problems, the other for female. My cabinets were made of the same materials as the walls and stood within easy access of my chair. Next to them, I placed a gracefully carved stand made of the precious woods on which stood an alabaster vase filled with a golden ointment, which I could use to help heal every wound and disease I was to encounter in the next year. Others created any number of tools, instruments, chemicals, medicines, and equipment they felt they might need. I opted for simplicity. To the right of the chair on the left far side wall, we each installed a special compartment for transferring to and from different psychic levels. It had a special door which came down from the top and lowered into the floor. Our laboratories now complete, we were ready to receive our counselors. We were told these counselors would be anyone we chose, from Buddha to Grandma Moses, but we were not to be surprised by who actually showed up. They frequently were not the ones expected. One rabbi taking a previous course had reportedly asked for Moses and Rebecca and wound up with a belly dancer and some pharaoh. There was no question at all in my mind whom I wanted for my counselors. There was no higher source of wisdom to whom I could appeal than Jesus. I wondered if it was a presumptuous request, but then remembered Jesus has said in the Bible, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in." Revelation 3:20, King James. So I felt on that basis perhaps he wouldn't mind. Then, as we were told a female counselor was necessary, I decided upon Sarah Bernhardt, having long since reached the conclusion I was not, after all, Sarah's reincarnation. I thought it might be nice to have her in residence. Perhaps she would bestow some much-needed acting tips should I ever decide to go back into theater. We were counted slowly down to our alpha level by Tom and entered our now fully established laboratory. We each sat in our chair and, by means of a control switch located on the arm, slowly brought down the special door of our little compartment to reveal little by little our counselors. As my door came down, the room was filled with a radiant light that emanated from the figure standing behind it. Slowly, an inch at a time, the figure emerged, shimmering brown hair parted in the middle, a high forehead, dark skin, eyes brown, deep and gentle. There, it was Jesus. The door went down now of its own accord, revealing the rest of the figure, which was robed in a long white linen garment. He was glowing with a holy radiance and smiling softly. I stood then, fell at his feet. Then Tom's voice instructed us to bring down our female counselor. I looked up. Again the door inched down, this time to reveal an aged Sarah. Curly red hair, wooden leg, and all. I could hardly believe they had both deigned to come into my laboratory. That night I lay in bed thinking of all the wondrous things that had happened during the day. But perhaps I had imagined it. Perhaps the Lord and Sarah were not actually my counselors. I would go down to my psychic laboratory and call them again. Yes, I knew Tom had warned us against doing that, but I had to know if I had the right ones. It was too important. I slowly stretched my body and nestled into my pillows as I began to count down to Alpha. Once in my laboratory, I sat in my chair and surveyed the crystals that shone with the richness of Tiffany-stained glass. It was so beautiful there. I turned my chair to face the door. "Oh Lord," I prayed, "please reveal the counselors I'm truly meant to have." The chamber door began lowering, the same radiance shining from behind it, but something was wrong. The hair was wild and matted, the forehead was covered with a coarse fur, and the eyes were slanted, gleaming and wild like the eyes I had seen in Playmaker's Theater. Fresh blood smeared the muzzle and oozed down long white fangs. The droplets spattered down the front of the tunic. Yet the rest of the figure was the same as before, covered in a long linen robe and gleaming. The figure stood growling, snarling softly, as he watched me. A numbing cold paralyzed my body on the bed. Oh God, let me out, my mind screamed, but I wasn't able to come out of level. Minutes, hours of suffocating horror. Then suddenly, through sheer force of will, something snapped, and I felt myself hurtled from my laboratory. My body shot upright, my whole system was in shock. I was trembling. I thought visitations like this were over, but I had disobeyed instructions. I brought this thing upon myself. God forgive me, help me. I turned on the light by my bed. Perhaps my rashness would not be held against me. Surely in the morning everything would be all right. The fourth and final day of our mind control training was tagged Applied ESP and had long been heralded as the final proof day. Today we would know for certain we were indeed functioning at alpha and received true psychic information. Tom handed out sheets explaining basic human anatomy. Today is the day we've been waiting for, he smiled at us. We'll begin by helping you establish at alpha level points of reference within the human body so that ultimately you will be able to detect and correct any abnormalities sensed within the organism. In fact, by the end of the day, you'll be reading cases much as the famed psychic Edgar Cayce did. With the difference that Cayce lost consciousness at his deeper levels, you'll be performing similar feats at a deep, though conscious level of mind and will not lose control as he did. Go ahead and find a comfortable position on the floor and let's begin. During the first programming session of that day, we counted ourselves down to level. We were told to enter our laboratories and greet our counselors. I felt afraid as we went down, but tried to relax as the monotonous sound of the metronome began. Surely everything would be fine. Two figures were in the lab waiting for me, facing the wall. They turned slowly towards me as I entered. I gasped. Both Sarah and Jesus now had werewolf faces. They just stood there watching me, growling softly. I suddenly understood they were not going away. I was going to have to deal with them face to face. After a long moment, I gathered courage and approached the two figures. As I did, they began changing. The face of Jesus flashed on, shining and loving. Then, in a flash, the werewolf reappeared. The same was happening with Sarah, on and off, on and off. I forced myself to approach the figure of Jesus and say, Lord, why are you and Sarah doing this? It frightens me. Jesus' face appeared, smiling and gently. Do not be afraid, he said. We only want to teach you that not everything that seems to be evil on the surface really is evil down beneath in its essence. When you truly understand this, our werewolf faces will be gone forever, and you will ever see us as we really are. The words sounded in my mind as clearly as though they had been spoken aloud, but they made no sense to me. Then suddenly it was clear, however frightening these beings appeared, they were not evil. I decided to learn to trust and accept them, regardless of the discrepant images they might present. It seemed as though it was all designed to strengthen me and make me grow in spiritual understanding. The evil faces reappeared, grinning hideously, waiting for my response to their revelation. I accept what you have told me. I will try to learn my lesson soon, Lord. I approached him and he bent to receive my kiss upon his woolly, blood-matted forehead. Thank you, little one, came a gentle voice. Tom had counted us up several minutes before, but I hadn't heard him. When I finally opened my eyes, I realized everyone else was up and around and looking at me oddly. It was several weeks before I was able to gain enough control of my fear of the beings to warrant the disappearance of the werewolf faces. About a month later, I went through the course a third time. Kim took it with me at the Mexico City house. She also asked for Jesus as her counselor, as she had been a committed believer for several years. She had been reluctant to take the course, but did so at our urging. When time came to receive her counselors, she said the face of Satan pressed in on her. Then a loud crash and a powerful voice cried out, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." As the satanic vision vanished, she was convinced that she had seen Satan and that mind control was occultic and spiritually dangerous. Because of what my counselors had told me, however, I decided she simply had not evolved sufficiently to understand what had really happened. Why had she been so afraid? After all, I had seen my horrors and faced them head on. That seemed the only way to handle the situation. No true spiritual progress could be made by running away from what was fearful. It had to be dealt with face to face. Too narrow-minded, I concluded. She'll never truly grow spiritually. So I discounted all her frantic warnings. As Tom had promised, that last day of mind control was a tremendous success. We did indeed receive all the proof we needed of our working at Alpha. We had each been asked to bring several 3x5 cards, each with the name, age, sex, and geographic location of some individual personally known to us, preferably someone with a serious illness or disability of some sort. As complete a composite as possible of that person's condition was to be made and written on the card, which was then turned in to Tom without being shown to anyone else. He distributed the cards at random, 2 or 3 per person. We then divided into groups of 3, preferably not with close friends, and went off to find a secluded place to work. One person was to act as the psychic, another as the orientalogist who would help guide the beginning psychic in his exploration. A special orientalogist sheet was provided for this purpose. The third person was to function as a secretary, writing down what the psychic said for documentation. Each person would read several cases and then switch roles. The psychic was directed to enter his laboratory, greet his counselors, and say his welcome prayer, which could range anywhere from "Hi, glad you're here," to the Lord's Prayer. Then the orientalogist helped count the psychic down to an even deeper level of mind, where he was told he would be accurate and correct in the reading. At the count of 3, the body of name, age, address, sex will be on your screen. 1, 2, 3, snap of fingers. The body of name, age, address, sex is on your screen. Sense it, feel it, visualize it, imagine it, create it. Know it is there. Take it for granted it is there. Scan the body with your intelligence. From where you know is the head to where you know are the feet. Up and down, once a second. While scanning the body in this manner, allow your intelligence to indirectly select 3 areas of greatest attraction. These areas were then mentioned as the psychic perceived them. He was encouraged to say whatever came to his mind. The areas of attraction were then amplified, and the possibilities of afflictions or malfunctions were allowed to enter the psychic's mind. Keep talking as you investigate. Tell me everything that you are inclined to say. You will feel as though you're making it up. This is the right feeling. Tell me all your impressions, whether you think they are right or wrong. Where the psychic was accurate, he was told to review his feelings at that point to make it easier to recognize his accuracy on other readings. The counselors often gave the information needed, and occasionally, even in medical terms, unknown to the psychic. Frequently, not all the information had been included on the card, and something sensed by the psychic would be greeted with exclamations of surprise when discussing the case with the person who submitted the card, who, incidentally, was not to be in the room during the reading, saying they had forgotten all about the particular condition. Frequently, the person who submitted the card would later learn the person did indeed have or had some ailment or condition the other person was not even aware of, such as scars or broken bones. Some thought perhaps our results in the readings were merely extraordinarily fortunate bits of guesswork. To prove the point, the skeptics were instructed to attempt reading a case without first going to alpha level. They failed dismally, given the vast range of possible diseases, malfunctions, and conditions of the human body. Accurate guesswork was out of the question. We were indeed perceiving information psychically. The theory behind all this activity was that if information could be picked up, then information could also be transmitted. Whether the person on the receiving end was aware of it or not, if so, then diseases could be reversed and healed. Sometimes the psychic would operate on the tumor or crush kidney stones. Hey, bring them over here. With a metal hammer or rub a healing balm on aching joints. Problems could be solved, disasters could be foreseen and prevented. To avoid a slew of self-proclaimed doctors from flinging themselves on society at large, Tom emphasized that we were never to diagnose. Only medical people have license to diagnose and heal. We conduct psychic investigation and detect abnormalities and malfunctions at psychic level. At the end of each reading, the Orientologist would say, every time you enter this dimension with the sincere desire to help humanity, you will be helping yourself. Your talents will increase and you will become more accurate every time. And this is so. Our aim was to be the good of humanity. I don't think there was one of us there that day who was not awed at the possibilities and the power now within our grasp. We had been taught all the basics. Now it was only a matter of practice. And practice I did, consciously keeping myself at alpha as long as possible during my waking hours, and programming my sleep at night to remember and interpret dreams. I read as many cases as I could on my own or with a friend named Joan, who recorded my increasing accuracy. As was the case with other mind control graduates, I was perceiving not only physical problems, but spiritual and psychological difficulties as well, frequently gaining information on their pasts as well as their futures. I was also beginning to practice psychometry, that is, seeking information from sensing the vibrations of an object. On the evening of July 15th, 1971, a small group of us met for dinner at the Jensens. Like so many people in Mexico, the Jensens were avid collectors of artifacts. After dinner, they took us on a tour of their artifact room. It was filled with all manner of wonderful masks, statues, and objects collected over the years from all over the world, though primarily from Mexico. Mr. Jensen paused at one table which displayed part of his African collection. He picked up a bracelet. It was a strange object made of intertwining metals that looked like brass and silver. He said nothing as he handed it to Tom, but merely asked him whether he could perceive anything about it at level. We all sat on the veranda while Tom went down to level. As he was concentrating, I was startled to see the shadowy figure of an Arab dressed in long white robes standing just behind Tom's right shoulder. He was staring down at the bracelet, his eyes riveted on the object. I almost cried out, but then Tom was not in danger. I kept silent and watched. The figure drew back into the garden. I could see him by a tree. Two natives, tall and handsome and gleaming, as though oil had been rubbed into the skin, appeared by the wall to Tom's right. The woman wore little besides an elaborate loincloth, some gold chain necklaces and earrings. The bracelet Tom was holding was on her left wrist. They just stood there staring. Several minutes passed. Tom came up from level, shaking his head. He could see nothing about the bracelet. I told them of the beings who were standing there and asked for the bracelet. As I counted down, I felt suddenly transported to a strange country. I was standing at the edge of a gorge. The countryside was rocky, dry, and bushy. Far below was a river, angry and swollen from rains far upstream. Across the gorge, I could see the Arab who had been behind Tom. Another man was with him. They were arguing violently over several small chests filled with jewelry. Then I saw the Arab push the man over the cliff. I could hear him screaming as he fell. The Arab hastily replaced the objects which had spilled from one of the chests during the scuffle. Several pieces hidden by a small shrub were inadvertently left behind. That was all I could see. It all seemed to happen in an instant and then was over. I opened my eyes and put the bracelet down. I couldn't hold it any longer. As I told the group what I had seen, Mr. Jensen looked excited. It was impossible to confirm what I had seen, but the man who had given the bracelet to him had found it in a location very like the one I described. It was during the days of July 13th through 16th, when I was going through the mind control course for the second time, that the wonderful visions began. One morning, as I went into my laboratory, I immediately felt myself strangely light, almost weightless. My counselor, Jesus, was standing there waiting for me. I saw myself floating towards him, drawn by him. The intense golden glow emanating from him was almost blinding. It filled the entire room, absorbing into the crystal walls, which then gave back the golden rays. He was smiling at me. It had been almost a week since I had last seen the werewolf faces, and I was beginning to conquer my fear. His right hand was filled with a liquid fire. The flames flickered and danced as he cupped it in his hand. As I stood before him, he poured the fire over my head. It grew and flowed over my body until I was engulfed by it. It was cold, yet burned, and a strange sweet odor filled the room. Soft voices surrounded me with wonderful sounds of music. Then I saw a woman, beautiful with flowing hair and robes of shimmering dark blue spangled with tiny stars. I could see her dimly at first as she appeared through the translucent crystals. She came towards me. She took me by the shoulders and gently kissed me on the forehead. The third finger of her right hand pressed between my eyebrows just to the right. "Welcome, my child." Then she turned and floated back through the wall as she had come. I have never experienced such joy, such light and peace, such unspeakable ecstasy. I was on the right path at last. On the 22nd of July, during my third consecutive run in the program, Sarah, who had never said a word to me during the 25 days she had been with me, stood up and announced it was time for her to leave. She had been with me as long as she could spare and was needed elsewhere. The time had come for me to receive a new counselor. With that, she turned and left the room. Seconds later, a small Mexican Indian woman materialized. She didn't arrive as the other two had. It was her eyes that held me. Everything seemed to form around them. They were penetrating eyes, a deep amber in color. The eyes of one with ageless wisdom for whom there was no longer any surprises. Her face was chiseled, wrinkled, but still beautiful. Long gray hair was braided and tied in a loop behind her back. She wore a simple ankle length blue cotton dress, a maid's full apron, and simple sandals. Despite her aristocratic face, her whole appearance was that of a servant. As she appeared, that is the word that came to me, servant. I immediately assumed she was Pachita, but when I described her to Tom, he shook his head. Whoever I had seen, it was not Pachita. He suggested I ask her who she was, which I did. "Will you tell me who you are? I mistook you for Pachita. Forgive me." A faint smile crossed the woman's face. "You gave me no chance to tell you who I am," she said. "You are to call me Mamacita, little mother. I have come to remind you of your coming role as servant. I will teach you humility and lead you into true wisdom. I am honored you have come, Mamacita. I am willing to learn all you have to teach me," I answered, overwhelmed at her presence. I knew with her arrival that the time had come for me to meet Pachita. And what's that, page 84? And that's all, bruvs, for this reading.